Gamers and Digidestined, it's Mike, aka Sanaku from Overground, and welcome back to the channel. Also, welcome to episode 2 of the BT5 Rainbow series, where today we're going to be covering the color red. Now, this was meant to be a Shoutmon DX deck profile, but unfortunately, we did not pull enough Shoutmons to finish a playset. So, for our Rainbow series, we decided to build probably one of the most fun decks I've played in a really long time, and that is Red Greymon / Omnimon Toolbox. And if you're confused, let me explain. So in BT5, there were some very powerful cards for both the Greymon and Garurumon archetypes. And with those cards came very, very consistent searchers. And you can probably see him right here. So both the Agumon and the Gabumon for these new archetypes on play allow you to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and you can add a Greymon and or an Omnimon card and add it to your hand. So naturally, there are a lot of good Greymon cards and naturally a lot of good Omnimon cards. So I want to build a deck basically zeroing in on that aspect of it, and I want to build a deck that kind of had a Greymon for every occasion. You know, one Greymon to rule them all, so to speak. And there are just so many good Greymon cards in this game that it's impossible to fit them all. But I did my best to try to build a deck around the best parts of a Greymon engine, as well as the best Omnimons right now for the metagame as a whole. Now, I have tested this deck probably the most out of anything that you will see in the Rainbow series, and so it has probably gone through the most amount of changes. So this is not the first draft. This is probably the 3rd or 4th version of this deck at this point, and I expect it to continue to evolve as the format continues to progress and unfold. But as it stands, this is the one version of the deck that I am the happiest with right now. However, that's not to say that tomorrow or maybe even next week this might even look completely different again. But in the meantime, I implore you to take this list and, expand on it, improve on it, and let me know what you find as you continue to explore this new BT5 format. So let's go into the card by card, and then everything will start to kind of coalesce and make a little bit of sense. So the only playing 4 eggs in this deck, and that's because we're playing the new BT5 Koromon. And Koromon reads that when a Greymon or an Omnimon declares an attack, you get to draw 1 card. Now, as we've discussed in many Red videos in the past, Red struggled with consistency. And Koromon takes that complaint, turns it on its head, and says, I don't know why you were ever complaining in the first place. Koromon is literally everything that I want from a Red baby right now in terms of increasing my consistency. Paired that with all of the extra search power I now have in this new Agumon engine, and it's just phenomenal. The card draw now in this deck is insane. The consistency in order to keep up with your combo pieces and keep up your evolution chains is just so much more fluid and flows so much better now compared to Red decks of the past. And it's sad that it took us up to this point to finally get a Red deck that actually had that level of consistency, but I digress. So moving on to the Agumon portion of our deck. I say Agumon because they're not rookies, they're just Agumons. And this is because we're playing 2 copies of Nokia, so I'm just going to shift over here real quick. Nokia allows us, when she's played, to play an Agumon from our hand without paying its memory cost. So what this enables us to do is that if we're ever checking a Nokia in security, this guarantees that no matter what rookie we have in our hand, we can put it into play for free with her effect. And if we ever want to activate her from hand regardless, we'll also have a body to follow up with as well. So we're playing pretty much the best Agumons you can right now, given the circumstances, and that is 4 copies of the new BT5 Agumon. And again, as we just discussed, we get to look at the top 3 cards of our deck and add a Greymon and an Omnimon from that we find in that reveal, and add it to our hand. 4 copies of the promo Agumon. This is if we have Greymon in our name, we get plus 2,000. 4 copies of the starter deck Agumon, where any Digimon that's evolved over top of it will just get plus 1,000 flat. And 1 copy of Agumon Expert, just to kind of round out the entire engine, and allows us to kind of get back any one of them that we see fit in any given circumstance. Unfortunately, Agumon Expert cannot be played off of Nokia because it's not an Agumon card. She specifies Agumon specifically. That's why we're only playing 1 copy. There is an argument to play this 1.0 Agumon as well, and this is the one where on play we get to reveal the top 5 and add 1 tamer card among them and add it to our hand. However, this card has tested extremely poorly because by revealing 5, you're actually putting more combo pieces at the bottom of the deck that you could have otherwise just drawn into or searched with a different Agumon as well. So I don't believe that this card is very strong for this deck. Further testing might prove me otherwise, but for now, I don't believe that there's a place for that Agumon specifically. I try to fit as many on-play effects as possible when I'm playing a deck that combos with Nokia, so that way every Agumon I play can actually trigger and give me additional value instead of just providing a body. But in the circumstance, the BT5 Agumon is the only one that's kind of suited to fit that niche as it stands right now. So moving on to our champion lineup, we're playing 4 copies of the BT5 Greymon. This Greymon, its effect text is kind of hidden right now, but its effect is that if it evolves on top of an Agumon, which is why we're playing so many, you can gain 1 memory. So effectively, it'll always digivolve for 1 if you're evolving it into the battle area. And combo that with Nokia, we're going to talk again about Nokia real quick. Her effect reads that when we're digivolving into a Greymon or an Omnimon or a Garurumon, but that's irrelevant in this version of the deck, we can suspend her to reduce that memory cost by 1, which means that if we're evolving this Greymon specifically onto any one of our Agumons, if we have a Nokia in play, the evolution will always be free. Furthermore, it has a very, very cool inheritable where if the Digimon has Greymon or Omnimon in their name, it'll gain plus 2,000. Moving on, we're playing 4 copies of the new 1-cost blocker Monochromon for red. This is just to help us A, speed up our evolutionary processes, but also give us some extra defense where necessary. And then we're rounding out our champion lineup with 3 copies of the Security +1 Greymon. Now, in our ultimate lineup, we're playing 3 copies of the Secret Rare Metal Greymon for 1.0. Now, this Metal Greymon is very interesting to talk about because this is probably the first format in which this Greymon actually has a lot more value. So, regularly it has Security Attack +2. And when attacking, you lose 5 memory. However, with the introduction of Marcus, depending on how many Marcuses you have in play, you can actually mitigate how much memory you're losing when you declare an attack. But the reason we're playing this Metal Greymon is that it has the plus 3,000 DP inheritable. And now with the introduction of the next ultimate we're going to talk about, which is Metal Greymon Alteris mode, we can actually evolve our Alteris mode over our Secret Rare Metal Greymon to give us an 11,000 attacker immediately, which is actually really cool. And because we can evolve it for 1 over an ultimate with our Nokia, we can actually evolve it for free. So what we end up doing is that when we evolve into a Metal Greymon, into the battle area, for example, and we would need that Metal Greymon to attack over one of our opponent's Digimon before evolving into an ultimate or playing something else and ending our turn. That Metal Greymon there, we would always lose 5 memory on attack declaration, so there was no incentive to evolve into it and then attack. You'd always evolve into it in the battle area and just have it sit there so you can reap its inheritable later on. With Alteris mode, we can go into the Metal Greymon no matter where we are, evolve it into Alteris mode for 1 or potentially free depending on where we are in our Nokias, and then use that attack to swing over one of our opponent's Digimon or even at Security if necessary, and then evolve it into another Mega or play another card to end our turn. Alteris mode is also really good as well because it shares that same inheritable as the BT5 Greymon, which is Greymons or Omnimons get plus 2,000. And we want to have as many of these DP buff inheritables as possible because it's going to make our Megas ginormous and it's effectively going to give them a manufactured form of jamming. Furthermore, Alteris mode reads that when digivolving, if we have a card with Metal Greymon in its source, we get to delete one of our opponent's Digimon with 4,000 DP or less, which is another reason why we're playing the Secret Rare Metal Greymon. It's one of the best Metal Greymons that have a good on-field effect and inheritable that Alteris mode can then transform and slide evolve into in order to have an extra layer of destruction and an extra layer of removal. And rounding out our ultimate lineup with another Greymon, Rise Greymon. And this helps us just accelerate our Marcuses into play, as well as give us some DP reduction shenanigans that will combo with some of our Digimon on the top end as well. And speaking of our top end, we're playing quite the eclectic mix of Greymons. And I'm not going to lie, the list I have in front of me right now, I'm still not 100% sure if these are the proper Greymons that I want. There are arguments for a lot of different Greymons in the game. These are just the ones that I found have given me the most value, that have pulled the most weight. And so we got 3 copies of the BT1 War Greymon. This is the one where if you attack, you don't check any options. And the reason this is very powerful is because Security Control is one of those decks that is never going to go away. And in fact, it might actually even get more powerful with the introduction of more removal spells in BT5. So we want to have as many opportunities to shut that down as efficiently as possible. And because we're playing so many ways to give our Digimon extra DP buffs, we're more than likely to check multiple securities with this War Greymon, have it survive, and be able to turn off all those options. So it's a stack that's going to stick while getting the most value out of it. Following that up, we're playing 2 copies of Victory Greymon. Victory Greymon evolves for 4, but with Nokia we can mitigate that. And its effect is that on Digivolution we can Digiburst 2 to destroy a Digimon with 8,000 or less DP. Now, Digibursting is kind of a weird dichotomy in this deck, and it's why I'm not even sold on the Rise Greymons, because a lot of our very strong inheritables we never actually want to Digiburst away. So I think that I might eventually turn these Rise Greymons into a 4th copy of the Metal Greymon here and a 4th copy of Alteris mode. But the reason I like Rise Greymon is because it combos well with the Victory Greymon, because we can declare an attack with the Rise Greymon. Actually, sorry, one of the cool combos you can do with Rise Greymon is you can put Alteris mode over top of it, declare an attack if you have a tamer, reduce something by 2,000, then you can evolve over a Victory Greymon, and then if you've brought it down to 8,000 or less, then you can actually destroy it with Victory Greymon's effect, which is neat, and I enjoy that. But Victory Greymon just helps us kind of clear out Digimon, and especially for opponents going really wide, and then it gives us a big body to just start swinging for the fences on the next turn. Then to round out our Greymon lineup, we're playing one copy of the BT5 War Greymon. This effect is that when Digivolving, we can destroy one of our opponent's Digimon with blocker if we have a Greymon in source, and it actually has an inheritable with it as well, where on attack declaration we can delete one of our opponent's Digimon with 3,000 or less DP. And this War Greymon specifically combos really well with Rise, because we're seeing a rise of 5,000 DP blockers, because pretty much every color now has their one cost 5,000 blocker. We just got Monochromon in red, but purple got their Devimon. There's Colamon in blue now. Yellow had Pitomon in the last set. So what you can do with this War Greymon is that you can declare an attack with it. The Rise Greymon will reduce something by 2k, making it 3. And then if you have an Omnimon over top of this war, this will trigger and it'll actually delete that blocker, eliminating that threat. And then finally, one copy of Blitz Greymon. This is probably the Greymon that's been underperforming the most. D-Digivolution just doesn't have the same oomph that it used to. I'd rather just straight up delete the issue at hand. The only good thing that Blitz allows me to do is that it reduces my opponent's Digimon to a state of being where my Alteros modes and my Victory Greymons can now eat them successfully. So Blitz might end up getting bumped back up in order to kind of supplement that destruction package, because it kind of comes full circle. But for now, I'm just playing one copy and seeing how I like it. Moving on to our level 7s now, we're playing a pretty hefty Omnimon package. So we're playing, well, especially since there's so many more Omnimons that just got introduced. So we're playing 2 copies of the new Blitz Omnimon from BT5. And this Omnimon costs 4 to evolve as opposed to the 6 that we're kind of so used to. And its effect is that on Digivolution, we get to unsuspend it. But it has that Blitz ability, which means that if the memory counter moves over to our opponent's turn when it Digivolves, it is actually allowed to declare an attack. So if you have a tapped Mega, you can Digivolve into the Omnimon, unsuspend immediately, and then even if the memory moved over to your opponent's turn, you can declare an attack. And this Blitz Omni is basically used to just end games. We're playing so many ways to get additional security checks, because we're playing this Greymon here. This War Greymon here will get a security check on evolution. So it's a way to just close out games once we've got our opponent down to 0. If we have any Mega in play, we slap Blitz Omni down, and if there are no blockers threatening our way, we just plow right through them and we finish the game. But because we have ways to search Omnimon, it's worth playing other Omnimons for very specific niche situations. And that's why we're playing one regular Omnimon and one Alter S, because if we're playing against rush-style strategies, Alter S can quickly shut that down, and Omnimon, the regular one, is specifically in here for Diaboromon matchups, because sometimes your opponent will get a ton of tokens out, and you just want to wipe them completely clean. I think the suite of Omnimons that you play in any deck nowadays is going to A, dependent on what the deck's main win condition is, and B, what your local or regional meta game is going to be. Because I'm telling you right now, in a lot of situations, some of these Omnimons might be better than others. I think the best argument right now is that Blitz Omnimon is kind of the way to go for a deck like this. However, I like having extra options in my back pocket, especially if they're searchable. Now moving on to our Tamer lineup, we're playing 3 copies of Marcus because we want to see it as often as possible to make sure we hit that 3 memory per turn threshold. It's also very powerful because anytime a Greymon declares an attack, we can suspend him to gain a memory. And since Greymon is like 75% of this deck, if not more, any swing that we're going to be doing with any of our Digimon is going to be generating us memory to help us continue to extend our turns. And then 2 copies of Nokia, we talked about her briefly already. She helps us accelerate our Agumons into play while also helping us trim down our memory costs for any of our Greymons and or our Omnimons. Lastly, we're rounding out the deck with 2 copies of Transcendent Sword. These could be Gaia Force, but I'm just testing it out right now to see how it feels. Transcendent Sword lets us destroy any Digimon with 11,000 or less DP, but if we have an Omnimon or a Greymon in play, that cap goes up to 15,000 instead. So the reason that Gaia Force is better is because Gaia Force has literally no restrictions. However, for 1 cost less, that can sometimes come up, and that's generally why I'm testing Transcendent Sword right now. Instead, just to see if the play from hand for 1 less will really make a difference in the grand scheme of things. But as far as we're concerned with its main effect, we're generally always going to have a Greymon in play or an Omnimon, so we're always going to be hitting those heights of 15,000. So yeah, this is the Greymon Toolbox list that I have built for the color red, and that's going to be episode 2 of our BT5 Rainbow series. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And if, there's something that you want to talk to me about, if you think that, I might be wrong, or if there's something you would like to change about this list, if you think that my theories towards some of the ratios are a little bit off as well, feel free to let me know, and I'll be sure to get back to you. I love reading your comments, and I love building these decks with you guys as we continue to explore the format. If you like what we do here at Overground, please consider giving us a subscription and help us reach our next milestone goal. I have been Mike, aka Sanaku, once again. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you all in the next one, where we're going to be covering the color blue, and maybe an opposite of our friend Agumon.